About 15 years ago, I first met Gail Gillingham Wylie. And at the time, Gail ran, I believe it is called the Autism Society of Alberta. Edmonton? No? What was? Consulting Service. Oh, Autism Consulting Services within Alberta. And Gail had a really interesting and amazing practice where her focus was working with autistic children. One of the most beautiful and magical things that I've seen in my life was when I first met Gail, going to her clinic and meeting some of the children that she worked with. And then later, what was it, about 10 years later, 6 years later, 8 years later, Gail? All right, 4? All right. 4 years later, after coming back from China, I was on tour, and Gail came to one of my courses in Edmonton. And with Gail came one of the children that I had met 4 years ago. When I first met Neil, and I think this was probably in your early work with Neil, Gail, when I first met Neil, Neil was stimming a lot. You know, very physically pronounced symptoms of his autism. And I think he was probably relatively high on the spectrum, not that I really know, but I would think that he was relatively high on the spectrum. Well, 4 years later, Neil, the same kid that I met, was now attending my class as a practitioner behind the device, working in Gail's clinic on other autistic children through the device. It was one of the most beautiful, magical things I've ever seen happen with this technology. 4 years later, he was working on another, and he blew me away. He floored me. My initial pre-qualification of him being in my class was dismissive. I thought, there's no way he's going to grasp the majority of the concepts we're going to discuss in the class. How wrong I was. Because he was asking questions and conceptualizing the usage of the device in ways that no one else has. It was such an epiphany and so beautiful to see that. Since Gail's work has ventured all over the place, you know, the woman has certainly become one of the masters within quantum biofeedback. And today she's here to discuss, to share with us, I believe her presentation is on self-awareness and as it correlates to a book that Gail has recently published and put out on the market, which we're all super proud of her for. So before I hand it over to Gail, I must first also introduce you to the man to Gail's, your left, Gail's right. This is Clay. Clay is one of the most beautiful, kind-hearted, beautiful souls I've ever met. Look at that face. And Clay, every time I see these two together, Clay makes me want to be a better husband. Because he is so supportive and so wonderful always, the way I see them together. And it makes me want to be a better man, absolutely, when I see this man. So most recently, these two, I believe Clay just had a birthday, and Gail went out and bought him a castle in Scotland. Nope. So now Clay is a laird in Scotland, and I will introduce you to the Lord and the Lady of the Manor.
And believe it or not, that's true. We own 1 square foot of a piece of property in Scotland. That means that we get to call ourselves Lord and Lady. Isn't that ridiculous? Okay, now I'm going to start. The year is 1993. January 1993. I am sitting in the kitchen of one of my friends having coffee. And she looks at me and she says, "Gail, I'm very, very worried about you. You are the strongest woman I have ever known. But today, you look so fragile that I feel like I could wipe you out just by waving my hand in front of you. And then she looked at me for a while longer and she said, yet, deep within, your core continues shining brightly, unbreakable, unbending. I was a little bit surprised when she said this, because I thought I was putting on a pretty good show. I didn't think anyone could see the condition I was in, but obviously she could. For 24 years, I was married to a man who was sexually abused by the Catholic Church. For 20 of those years, it was a secret. For 20 of those years, a rage filled our house continuously because of that secret. It finally was revealed on national television in Canada when other people from the orphanage that he was raised in went to court and charged the Christian Brothers with abuse. And our life went from rage to total craziness. We couldn't turn on the television. We couldn't read a newspaper. We couldn't turn on the radio because his secret was right out there in front of everyone. He finally told me the truth, and he went from beating me to trying to kill me because I knew the secret. And so, by January 1993, I had reached the point of suicide. I lived in a community in northern Canada called Fort Smith, and the Slave River runs through Fort Smith, and it connects with Great Slave Lake, and then it moves on to the Mackenzie River, and then all the way to the Arctic. And in the middle of the town where we lived in was the river with the Rapids of the Drowned. And they are called the Rapids of the Drowned because of the number of people who've already drowned there. And all you have to do is step off a rock, and you've had it. And all I wanted to do was step off that rock and end it. I told my husband, not this one, and he put on his coat, and he said, do what you have to do, and he walked out. And my marriage was over. To death do us part. And so what this woman was seeing was a woman who had lost everything and who was putting on as good a show as she could for the world. By February of 1993, I had to leave. It was too dangerous to stay. And when I got off the plane in Edmonton, I was completely and totally at a breaking point. And I have built myself up from that since. I was looking for answers. And everywhere I went for answers, nothing fit what was happening to me. And so I continued to look and look until 1994 when I found some work that was done in the early or late 1800s by William James, and it's called The Model of Self. So in 1890, Dr. William James published a book in which this model, anyway, this is what was written in his book. A man's self is the total of all that he could call his own. Not only his body and his psychic powers, but also his clothes, his home, his wife, his children, his ancestors and friends, his reputation and works, his lands and horses and yacht and bank account. And when I read that, and when I saw the model, it suddenly made sense to me what was happening to me, because what she saw when she saw the fragile butterfly was somebody that only had the spirit left. Everything else was gone. I had lost it all. And so I realized that I had found an answer for myself. Not only had I found an answer for myself, I had found an answer for all of the members of my family, because they too had gone through an awful lot with what had happened to me. Two in now. Okay, the next one. So there's the model of self as developed by William James in 1890. The center of the self is the pure ego. Around the pure ego is the spiritual self. Around the spiritual self is the social self, and around the material self, social self is the material self. And what this becomes is a very simple, straightforward picture of each and every one of us. And it is the same picture for every human on this world, right? We are all this. Now, being as I like to do things my own way, I changed it a little bit. Next picture. Because ego is so connected with Freud and that we're not using it very much, I switched the words around a bit, and I turned the center of it into spirit, because that fits our world more at this time. Around the spirit, I put the mind. Around the mind, I kept the social self and the material self. And this is how I defined myself and my children and the rest of the members of my family, and basically everyone else on earth at this point. Next. So the spirit of each human being is the center of one's individuality. It is a solid, unchanging force which comes to us in conception and lives on after the death of the body. It has no shape, no size, no weight, and yet its presence and absence can be seen as one looks into the eyes of a living or dead person. We all have a spirit. We don't have to call it the spirit. We can call it anything you want. And the reality of this model is you can use whatever words you want that you're comfortable with. But we all have that solid core, and it is unchanging. It is who we truly are. Next. The mind is our thinking self, the inner subjected being, which contains all of our values and our beliefs, our facilities and dispositions, our abilities and talents, our moral sensibility and conscience, our memories and our reactions. The mind is made up of that which cannot be seen or isolated or measured in any concrete manner. However, the activity of the mind is revealed through our behavior. Okay? The third ring is the social self. And the social self consists of the recognition of an individual receives from others. It is made up of the images of all of the individuals in the world who have ever had contact with one throughout one's life. This contact does not have to be personal, but can happen through friends, through reputation, through the media, and so on. And so, back in 1993, when I was living in the territories, I had a family, I had a few friends, and I had the people I was working with, and the small community I grew up in. They knew me, and that was my social self. Today, my social self contains people from all over the world because of the work that I've done since that time. So it opened a door. The outer circle of the model of self represents the material self, which is made up of all we have that can actually be measured. So the material self is made up of the stuff we have accumulated over time. Some of us have a little, and some of us have much too much. It is also made up of our bodies as a whole and each part individually. So we own, not so fast, so we own our blood, we own our hair, we own our DNA, and so on, as well as the body that is standing before us. Okay, now. It is made up of our food, and our food is made up of our experience in life and our DNA for what works with us for us. For each of us are different. We do not live on the same diet. The amazing thing to me is the incredible diets around the world that have kept people alive. And then you have people saying, but the only way is. No. There's many, many, many ways to feed ourselves. It's made of our homes, okay? It's made of the cars we drive, okay? It's made of the clothes we wear and the fashion choices we make and the people that we hang out with that are dressed like us because we feel comfortable with them. It's made of every role that we have. And in this picture, I am a wife, a daughter, a sister, a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a sister-in-law, and a great-aunt, all at the same time. It's made of our jobs, and it's made of the jobs that we have, whether we're getting paid for them or not, okay? It's made of all of the activities that we choose to do, and the hobbies, and what keeps us busy. It's made of all the things that we claim, the teams that we cheer for, the clubs we belong to, the grocery stores that we call our grocery store, our bank, our community, our bus, and so on. We own it all. And last of all, it's made up of the planet, our planet. And each of us have that one. It's the same for all of us. These things are all from William James. I hope you realize that, because I don't talk like this most of the time. All these things give him the same emotions. If they wax and prosper, he feels triumphant. If they dwindle and die away, he feels cast down. Not necessarily in the same degree for each thing, but much in the same way for all. And when I found this model, it explained to me why, in 1993, I felt like everything was flying away from me and going in all directions. And I used it to begin the healing process. In 1990, I finished my family therapy education, and I realized what an incredible tool this was for me to use in my family therapy office, and that's when I started using it with other people and seeing the healing that took place very quickly. In 2001, 9/11 happened, and I heard time and again on the television media people saying or describing exactly how they felt about 9/11, and it was just like I felt in 1993, that we lost ourselves. We didn't know how to find ourselves. And so I decided to write the book. Well, not really. I decided it needed to be a book. And so I went out for a few years searching for the book that I could share with all my clients. I couldn't find it, and so I wrote the book. In 2005, the scale came into my life. And I realized that with the scale, I can also use this model to get to a really quick awareness with my clients. So now I would like you to take a piece of paper and draw a picture of yourself. So what's the first thing you put on? No. The spirit. And you make it as solid as you can because I'm not going to color it all in. The second thing, your mind. Third thing, social self. And then your material self. Okay, everybody got your picture drawn? I slap your fingers if you didn't do it. Debbie Drake found that out in Vegas. Okay, let's move on. So now I had a self, and then I realized that I could strengthen this model if I added a simple line. And so I added what I call the lifeline. And what the lifeline does is connects all 4 layers of the self. So your spirit is connected to everything that's going on in your mind. Your social self is connected to everything that's in your mind, and your material self is connected. However, we don't always live there. And what the next thing you discover is that typically we have a compass of where we live. And if you look up, it runs all the way, but you can be living here, or here, or here, or on your lifeline. Okay? So now, as a test of seeing how much you understand, I would like you to think about your social self. And remember, your social self is not what you think or what you are. It is the picture that someone else has of you. Okay? Now, I want you to think of all the people that have a picture of you and pick the one and put them on your lifeline. The one who accepts you 100% as you are. So think of that person in your life who does that. Has everybody got somebody? Or you can put the first initial, just put the person on your line. Usually it's not your parents, by the way. Have you figured that one out already? I'm just going to put a friend of mine right now. There, he's on my line. Most people do not accept us on our line. Most people are a little bit above or a little bit below, and some people insist on being over here. So my ex-husband, because of what had happened to him as a child, put me over here because he could not trust anyone. And so he did not trust me, right? And so for 24 years, I lived like that instead of like this. Okay? Now I want you to think about your material self. Think about all of the things in your material self and pick out the one that's taking the most energy for you. What's using up the most energy? So for me, right now, it's my health, right? It seems that every time I get something good on the scale, my body goes, whoops, we're going to do this now. I'm trying to take it as a learning experience so I can help other people, but you can show how much energy you're using by the size, right? We have gone through an awful lot of trauma in the last few years in this field. And if we take this as Bill Nelson's model, right? All of us thought we had him on the line, right? Many of us, most of them aren't in the room right now, were giving him all of their attention, right? All of their energy. But he gradually moved over here and chose to live over here. And he wants to drag us all over there. And that's why we had to make the break. Because we cannot live over here. We have to live on the line if we're going to do well. And so we have an awful lot of grief still going on in the field because we had to basically take him out of our social self in order to protect ourselves. Understand that? It's a pretty big lesson in this field right now. Okay. So you can see the compass moving here, and it moves to wherever you are willing to do it. There's me in my marriage, 24 years of that. And it leads to suicide. It does. There's me now. Except today, my books aren't here. Okay, right? Next one. Oh, back. Okay, what happened to me in February of 1993? I walked out of my job, of my home, with one little suitcase. That's all I had left. I had totally and completely wiped off my material self. Okay? No one who knew me could believe that I was doing what I was doing. Everyone had a different picture of Gail. And so my social self completely disintegrated. When I got married in 1968, I stood in front of the altar and I made a promise that I was planning to keep all of my life. I believed in commitment. I believed in honesty. I believed in doing a good job. I believed so many different things. And in walking away, I wiped out all of that. And all that was left was the spirit. Where's my mind? And so all I was left was the spirit. So when I got off that plane in Edmonton, there wasn't much left but the spirit. How many of you are on Facebook? How many of you have had the opportunity to watch the video of the mouse that is caught in a trap and dies in a garage? If you have a chance to see this video, it is absolutely fascinating because it's dark, right? And this man is trying to catch this mouse in his garage, and so he sets up the trap, and then he sets up his video camera. And the trap catches the mouse, and the mouse, you can hear the mouse fighting for life. And then you see his spirit leave. You see his spirit leave. It's real. We have that one. And it's very strong. Okay. Now, the other part of all of this is change. Nothing is permanent except change. And so when you're looking at the self, what you're looking at is a constantly moving, changing form that does not stay the same from minute to minute, second to second even. The self is not and never will be a solid unit, which can be drawn, accepted, and understood for all time. Only the spirit remains constant, the same from minute to minute, day to day, year after year. Everything else is formed over time and can be modified, discarded, lost, or rejected. The levels of the self which encircle the solid core of the spirit, are a fluid, moving, and ever-changing bundle which encircle the central core. Certain parts may appear to remain static for a time, but everything in the self, except the spirit, is constantly evolving. Adjusting to these changes in the self is an ongoing process throughout each of our lives. And because change, all change, is uncomfortable and takes energy, it is necessarily fine, but it don't feel good, all right? And it causes us anxiety. And what do we see on the scale more than anything else? Resistance to change. Anxiety is the result of this change, and how we deal with this anxiety is how we cope with the world. The direct result of anxiety, a result of a threat, which is change, of some kind or another to the level of the selves. The more levels of the self are involved, the higher the level of anxiety. And the closer the level involved is to the spirit, the higher the level of anxiety and the more extreme the response. So, if I have a change in my material self, such as I buy a new house and have to move, it causes anxiety. But it does not cause the same amount of anxiety as having a divorce and giving up on a commitment that you believe at, which is the mind. You understand? And so, change leads to discomfort. Discomfort leads to the buildup of stress, and this leads to the use of coping skills to relieve the stress. And all of us continuously are using one coping skill or another. And I think if you look at me, you can figure out mine pretty quickly. It's caffeine, right? And you're all agreeing. No, I can guarantee you this body looks like this because of 24 years of living in extreme fear. I protected myself with a wall of fat so that Igor wouldn't come up and hug me when my ex was present, because I would get a major beating if that ever happened, and it happened too often. Oh, and so when I was in Vegas, I had the PowerPoint at this point, and on the first day we had a mother with a child with autism being tested, and it came out that she had autism, and then the mothers that I've already worked with came running up to her and said, "Go and talk to Gail." And so we did put her son on that night. And what came up for him? Self-awareness. And so this is what we're going to talk about. How do you work with this little message on your thing using the model of self? In Canada, in a world of quantum nights, alliance, and so on, and I was blessed, absolutely, to me, to the nth degree, to have, what did you do? It's supposed to be there. Go back. I was blessed to be taught in that first week to follow the lead of the skill, not to use protocols. And I was taught by Darwin Davidson in 1 week what I was supposed to do so that I could follow the lead of the skill. And he stayed on the phone with me for a number of years until the total collapse after Alliance caused so much. No, I want the clasp and the demographics. We don't read each other's minds. Have you noticed that? That's why he's not on my line there. When I get them trained in that, I'll be okay. The most important thing that I've learned from the skill is I am responsible for myself. If you haven't learned that lesson yet, get to work on it, because it is the most important lesson of this device. The second one is to allow our clients to be responsible for themselves, to make the decisions. We don't chase them to get appointments. We don't hear, oh, have you heard? Whatchamacallit was diagnosed with cancer. You better call them up right away and get them on the scale. We don't go behind anyone's back and put them on, right? Let them be responsible for themselves. And so that was my first big lesson, and it's an amazing one when you do it. Ho, 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 ho. How easy it is to say Hungarian customs. No, it isn't easy this time, but it is. It's their responsibility. They should have done their job. We would have books. The second thing is that when I work with autism, resonance frequency for autism is basically between 25,000 and 30,000 or around. You can pretty well tell the first time you put anyone on the scale if they're on the autism spectrum or not. And believe it or not, most of us are in one way or another. And so back in about 2011 or 2012, when we got the new program, our resonance frequency disappeared. And all we had was numbers up to 50. Every time we treated anyone, I don't know how many of you remember back then when we had this resonance of up to 50 at the most. Well, all of a sudden I couldn't do my job, right? So I was on a search for ways to get the resonance frequency back for a number of years, and people suggested all sorts of things. And then someone came up with the binary answer of doing a 1 if it's a yes and a 0 if it's a no. And it fixed the problem. Right now we're working on the newest version of Mandelay on the Quest, and the problem is fixed. I do not have to use those numbers, but I do use those numbers instead of filling in like 9 amalgam fillings or whatever, because I do find it does skew it. But by doing yes and no, you are also talking about what is going on in the body, and you can talk to your clients. The one interesting thing about this is the losing weight one. What's it say? Ooh. How many kilos overweight is seen by the patient? And of course we're doing yes or no. We're not doing numbers, right? And the answer to that is, do you need to lose weight or don't you? Because you can have a lot of people walking in the office who I would say maybe should lose a pound or 2, but they feel very comfortable with themselves. So it's a way you think, right? Whereas some people are so skinny that you almost cry, but they think they still need to lose weight. So that is a thought one. That's not as how the person is thinking, not. Okay, calibration. When clients first come in, number one, I don't ask them anything. I try not to have any information before I start working with them. But sometimes I do and sometimes I don't because of what they phone. But we don't really focus on their problem at all in the beginning. While we're doing calibration, I talk about the team that we are going to be working with. Because what I fully believe is that we are a team. And so throughout my sessions, I use the word we all the time. And when I ask yes/no questions, I use the word we. And this is because I see the team as being the program, the therapist, and the conscious, unconscious, and superconscious of the client. And so I describe to them how this works about the 10% of, have you heard that we only use 10% of the brain? It's one of my first questions I ask my clients, and they all say yes. And then I say, this is wrong. because, of course, you wouldn't be breathing if you were only using 10% of your brain. And so I say that whenever I say you chose during the program, it's because that's what's coming up. Something that your body has chosen. So it's not me doing it, it's not the skill doing it. Your body, your unconscious, conscious, and superconscious have chosen this treatment as the best one for your body. Yes, okay. Now, when you follow the lead of the skill, you don't worry about a lot of things like, whoops, it's not at 96, or anything like that. I don't. I go where the client has taken me. 88, I look at it and think to myself, I don't say this, well, this one doesn't want to work with it too hard today. But that's okay, we'll still work. If it's 96, wow, we're going to get some good work done today, and I will say that one. Okay, so we'll close. Now on the right of this, we have the situation hold at the bottom. Typically for a first visit for a client, I do not use that situation hold because I'm not getting any information from them. And I go directly to test and test. Today I'm going to put trauma to the knees. Because I'm working on myself, I'm putting my trauma to my knees. And if you've seen me hobbling around here, it's because my cat bit me. I was trying to put her in the cat carrier. She was terrified of small spaces. I knew that. So she was upset with me that I had to take her to the vet. And so we had a battle, and she won. Never, ever get bitten by a cat if you can possibly do that. If you watch underneath that butterfly, where the situation hold is, that's where self-awareness came up, right? So there are suggestions for treatment that come up there all the time, and they may switch during your program as you're working, and they're extremely powerful if you're paying attention to it. Okay, we're going to test. I'm going to sit down, and okay. Now, the other thing, if you want to work on in your minds, we don't want the answer right now, but in your minds, if anybody has an idea how to get ant bite poison out of my foot, that's another problem I haven't been able to eliminate with the skill yet. And what I did do, in Vegas, because of it, allergy to ant venom was coming up on here, and my foot swelled so much I couldn't even wear my shoes. So I did invert allergy ant venom, and now I don't swell up, but I can still feel it's there. So if anybody knows how to get rid of that, I would be appreciative of that too. I don't always use the model of self. It depends on my clients, but if I do, I can use any scrap of paper. You just pull it out and you draw on it, and where are you? Are you living here? Are you living over here? What do you call it? Social interactions. Does this person expect you to come to him, or is he making you real there? Now, I'm not going to be teaching anything anyone else has been teaching you. That's why I was sitting in the back taking notes all the time, because I figured I'm not going to double up on anything. And so things like VAR hop and stuff, you've already learned it. Yes, I share it with my clients, and yes, I use very simple words. Okay, the very first thing is that I do is once the report comes up, I scroll up to the top of it for the 5 areas of concern that we're working on. And environmental, physical, mental, social, spiritual. If anything is over 100, I take the top number. If the numbers are not over 100, I will take the bottom number. Now you will find if you have a person that's on the scale a lot, you're not going to have a lot over 100, right? So because I do this all the time on myself, you're not going to see when they're usually first-time clients or clients who are really, really desperately in trouble, you will have numbers over 100, right? Anyway, our lowest number is today mental. Mental and spiritual are matching. And so This is what I would talk to with my client right away. It appears that you have blockages in your mental, which is your way of thinking, and or in your spiritual, and so that's what I would be concentrating on. Now, if somebody comes in with a physical problem and it comes up mental there, I know pretty well that it's going to be an emotional conflict that we're going to run into, that it's not going to be physical. I do listen to my clients to a degree, but I also listen to this very strongly. I'm going to go through each of these one by one and share what I typically find or go after. I'm going to do some work on the scale with them, but mainly because of our time constraints, I'm just going to tell you what our concerns. So the first one is environment. Environment comes up an awful lot for a certain population I work with called autistic. Why? Because most of their problems are coming from us and our way of treating them. If you look at the social self, most of them are being forced to live like I lived for 24 years. Most of them are being treated like they're mentally retarded, that they need brain work, that they need social skills, and so on. And when you really get to know them, when you really get inside, you find out that they are so far more intelligent than we are, it's mind-boggling. If you have a conversation, a deep conversation with these people, and you're open to listening to them, you will learn things that you never dreamed possible. But very, very few of us are willing to do that. Most of us want to fix them. In other words, we put them on the other side, right? So social comes up with them a lot for that. But environment for them comes up, and that's when I say to the parents, what kind of a classroom is he in? Special needs? Depending. Over 100, high. Under 100, low. Depends. How many times have I been on my scale? Yeah, no, and it'll move around. Sometimes they have physical problems and so on. But I see environment for them all the time. Okay, other places I see environment. Allergies. Allergies are often huge for environmental problems. Toxins. We live in St. Albert. St. Albert is on the northeast corner of Edmonton. We live in oil country. Edmonton is one of the oil cities in Alberta. On the east side of Edmonton, there is a row of refineries and plastic factories that runs the whole east corridor of our city, right? Now, as the oil business has boomed, we have even more and more of this further out. But the main refineries for a long time have been on the east side of Edmonton. Directly east of there is a community called Sherwood Park. What comes up for people from Sherwood Park every time I put them on? Because they're being flooded. The wind is predominantly from the west, and they're being flooded with the toxins from these refineries. What can I do about that other than say, you're choosing to live there? We are choosing not to live there. This is where I am responsible comes into effect, right? Fungus. If there's fungus in the home or the buildings people are working in, you're going to see it coming up as environment. I had a woman call me from Thailand. She owns an indigo, and she was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And she went on holidays, and she felt great. And she came home, and she started getting sicker and sicker and sicker again. And she phones up, and she said, Gail, put me on your skio. I don't think my indigo is working. And sadly to say, she did get one of the indigos that never worked. So there she was pushing buttons, and nothing was happening. I put her on, and with 15 minutes, we had determined that there was fungus in the ceiling of her bedroom. And when they took down the ceiling tiles, they found it. So watch out for fungus. It can be a big one. Another one is EMF. I had one woman coming in who was coming regularly, and we would do some great work, and it would look really good in the office, and she'd go home, and she'd come back, and she was the sickest when she started. And this kept going on and on and on. And I discovered one day, as I'm talking to her, and pervasive, what are they called? The EMFs. What? Well, no, but the EMFs. What's that program called where we take them out? When we take out the EMFs. EMF? Electrical magnetic frequencies. And they're on our thing, on the risk panel called? The radiation. But what's the program called? Perverse energy. Thank you. Perverse energy. Perverse energy comes up on your scale. You know that you're probably dealing with EMFs. And it was coming up for her, and we were clearing it. And then she told me, when her and her husband retired, they decided to treat themselves, and they bought a penthouse, one of the most beautiful penthouses in Edmonton. And so she was living in this penthouse and with her husband, and then he had died, so now she was living there by herself. And the condo committee had gone together and decided to sell the space on the roof to a cell phone company. So she was sleeping under a cell phone tower. There was no way this woman was going to get better. But not only that, there was no way that she could sell her apartment because she didn't want to give the problem to anyone else. So here she sat, holding one of the most expensive pieces of property in Edmonton, and it was worthless because of a decision someone had made. So if physical comes up, and of course this is what most people are going to come in with. They're not going to come in with perverse energy problems usually, or mental problems or something. They're going to tell you that my back is hurting or so on, and so it should be a physical problem. So what do I do for physical? The first thing I do is I go to the Nelson report. Okay. If you go to the Nelson report, turn it on, make it. Okay. You're going to notice, first of all, that there's an anger up there. Do you have any idea who I might be angry at? Yeah. I'm just such a peaceful person, right? But if you read the Nelson report, you're going to come up with all kinds of information. These are the things I really pay attention to. Now, this is not on a well, it's a kind of a mixture, but the first thing I do is I copy the affirmation. Here we are, free of addictions, cravings, abusive substances, excess sadness, and resistant to pathogens. See, there's my limes. Pick it up. And I mean, it's interesting, if you read these things to your client. The first time we put Clay's daughter on, she had been they had been told shortly after she was born that there was a heart murmur, right? And now she's in her 30s and she's still worrying about the heart murmur. That's never showed up in any other way other than a doctor said this when she was very young. And pick it up and go to EPR. Yeah. And anyway, her first thing was, my heart works perfectly. So basically, this kind of can tell you what you're worried about, too. Now, the extreme sadness, I have to admit that talking about what happened in '93 hit me a little bit harder today, so I really find that fascinating that that came up there. So we're going to go to EPR, down to Oregon, and we're going to paste it in here. So what we are doing is giving her the affirmation, giving me the affirmation that I chose, right? Now, if your client comes in and wants to put anything else in there, that's their choice. And I let them, and we will type in anything they want. But we've got what the scale is already determined. Mark spiritual harmony, activate it, and close. And that will be running throughout the whole program. Once I was working on a woman in Germany. We were on a mailing list back in the email times before Facebook. Okay, close. And I had done her session, but I hadn't sent her a report. And during her session, her thing had been, I will live harmoniously with the people around me. I don't know, you've seen that one, right? Anyway, for the next week, every letter she wrote, she talked how she was living harmoniously with her husband and her children. She used the word harmoniously in Germany, and I hadn't told her that I had picked it up on the scale. And I'd never seen that word before or after. Okay, the next thing I'm going to pick up is the organs. And so we have adrenals, limbic, reticular. Whew. I'm an emotional mess. Do you read that when you see that? I would. Yeah. Okay. Did you pick it up? Okay, we're going to take that one and we're going to put it in programs, universal, and then in the middle box in the Schumann wave. You don't worry about the things now. Now, when you put these in, you have to put a space between. That's not what I told you to pick up. But you picked up the wrong line there. You've got energy. Anyway, but it's not. So anyway, you need to put a space between each of these if you want it to work well. This is not meant for cutting and pasting, and so that's why we have to play these little games if we're going to do it this way. But, okay, he's not going to waste that time today. Just remember, 2 spaces between each word. Copy, paste. Okay, and now we're going to go down to multimedia and turn on the Mandelay. I think that we have a problem in this room that people haven't been using their Mandelays a lot because both Clay and I are feeling overloaded. And it might be one of the reasons we're not sleeping too well because there's too many skills going at the same time without Mandelay. But it does protect us. Okay, close. Risks. You can turn this off. Hit all the buttons. And take, now we have inherited is 104, bone is 100, and cholesterol is 99, and the top is not sensory, is it? Now here I worry about things that are not between 60 and 100. And so if it's over 100, if we've got more than 1 over 100, I will take the bottom, well, they're called the top 3 from the bottom. If they're within 100, then I will go and take 2 from the top and 1 from the chronic, which is the top, and that stress is in? No, sensory. Anyway, you do these 3 right here because they're right at 100 right now. And again, we need to put in the space between these. I treat areas above once I put them there just for the few seconds that happens, just because we can do it and it doesn't take too long. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and try mine. He's blaming his glasses for not being able to see where to copy. Okay, did you copy it? No, not yet. Just hit, yeah, there now. Grab them. Okay, you're wasting our time. Okay, we're going to copy. We're going to close. We're going to go to programs, universal, and hololinguistic again. Going to have to replace you with a new husband here. believe me, this takes about 2 minutes when I'm in the office.
Where do you want it there?
Universal. I use first words. This is alphabetical order. You only need the first word to find it. Right? Okay, and we're going to paste it into primary disease. Close. We're not doing the things. Okay, now we're going to go to NLP. Down. Mental factors and emotion chart. Value of emotions. Value of neurotransmitters. And take the top 5 emotions. Double click on each emotion. They will go in the white line. Here we've got an interesting situation because now we don't have 1 space between, we have 4 spaces. So we have to take 2 spaces out. But we're not going to do that today. Copy. As you can see, it's interesting with the nervousness and stuff, right? Cut, copy, close, close, and go to Program, Universal. Click in the yellow box. Okay. Paste. Add to Schumann wave. And there. We are already working on the top organs, the top emotions, and the top risks, right? And it will work through the rest of the session. Close. Close. Now we're going to go to shaping function. Because we hit value of neurotransmitters, now we know all the top, neurotransmitters. So you start from the bottom and put in the numbers and double click between them. You can add the neurotransmitters. Now, yesterday we were doing one, and I do believe, yes, it's stronger. I have a tendency to do love plus 5. And I do notice that with my regular clients that we're using different neurotransmitters, which is telling me in the next session that they are actually, we've given them enough so that we can work on other ones. So I do read these things of what they are to the patient so they get to see what kind of things that are coming up. So like GABA's for the brain, renin is for the kidneys, and so on. I don't go into deep detail, but I just give them an idea of what's coming up there. Okay, disengage. Always disengage because it's stuck on love. If you don't disengage, it will stay on love only. Engage. Now it will have all 6 of them. And then give the body a reward because then the body knows what's coming. Because this is behavior modification. And it is a reward for the body each time we hit 85 or above throughout the session. Okay? Close test. Okay? What? You didn't know how to find it? Oh, Audrey's going to tell you. Yeah. Okay, so we're back on the test page. We've done the... one of the things I always do is go up to the settings. I'm not one of these people that does a lot of things in the settings, but since the Quest came out, they took out the colors. I had my Skio in 2005, and we had colors, and they're gone. And so if you scroll down to the bottom of the settings, sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. You get the colors back, okay? Click it. And what I look for here is the liquescence. So basically, the only one we've got coming up is the yellow arthro there. But I always pay attention to which liquescence are coming up because that's what the body is asking for there, right? Okay. Then I go to short SAR codes, and I do the due diligence. I was taught very, very strongly to do due diligence on the short SAR codes. But at this point, we also do a couple of other things that other people don't do. In the bottom, we have the Hebrew letters. And so we scroll down to the bottom of that one. And we have what is Hebrew saying BMP. And what this means is become receptive. So it opens up the body to our frequencies. And so the first thing that we do is put it up there, then we scan the photo. And then we rectify it to 100. And now when we leave here, this one will stay running in the background for the rest of the session. So we've got this become receptive. I learned this from a little old man in his 80s, a wonderful man, back right in 2005. And I've used it ever since, and it's a powerful little button there. Okay, and then, got it 200? What?
Hebrew Zayn.
It's Z-A-Y-N. No, Z-A-Y-I-N. Look for that. Become receptive.
I-N.
Yeah.
Z-A-Y-I-N.
Or Z if you're from the United States. Z if you're from Canada. Oh. She's expecting me to speak Hebrew now. Sa-in? Sayin. Okay, in Hebrew it's Sayin. I learned my English phonetically, and I can only, I can't even say the names of half the people here just because I can't do that anymore. Okay, so we've got that at 100 now, so it's going to be staying there and running in the background. Go up to the short thing and load that one. Oh no, I didn't want to, yeah, well you can do it now anyway. Load it. I was just thinking about the other one, and close. We're not going to do all the circles today. I just want to show you the unconscious choices. We always do unconscious choices because it's very, very interesting what comes up there in comparison with the client. I have had autistic kids who have headaches and so on, and we go on here, and the brain, the exact part of the brain comes up where that pain's coming from, just by doing this one. So use these unconscious choices because they're going to tell you something. Okay, so I do 3, we're moving on. And then I go to the next part and do the due diligence. And how many people know the due diligence? Okay, due diligence, lymph, liver, kidney, large intestine, endocrine. Make sure you do them. Now you can add anything else you want to it, but make sure those 5 are done. The very first week we had our scale, we went out to visit Clay's mother and father, and his mother had actually not been able to lift her right hand above her waist, like she was stuck here. And in order to get her housework done, she was actually using her left hand to move her right hand for 2 years. We did the shoulder program on here, and she went from that to, look at me, look at what I can do. And it never went away again. What happened? We have no idea. Magic. Okay, again? Yeah, the due diligence. Lymph, liver, kidney, large intestine, endocrine. Those 5 for sure. Lymph, liver. No heart. Okay, lymph, liver, kidney, large intestine, endocrine. Now, endocrine. Endocrine, okay, that's the one I'm saying. Am I saying it funny? Maybe in Canada, that's how we say it. We do talk different, don't we, all over the world? Anyway, if you do those 5, you could do anything else. Personally, I usually do my throat. I usually do my knees. But you can do anything on here you want. If you got somebody coming in with heart problems, do the heart and so on. Okay, so that's the short circles. The risks we've already seen. Okay, and the organ chart. Now the last thing I want to show you is the organ chart just because it works so wonderful on this device. So if you go to spinal, down to, universal spinal, You get this. The first thing I do here is try time therapies because it'll tell you the organs that they want to work on. As you can see, it says mucous membranes here, and it has a couple of things. If you're working with autism, if you are working with anyone who has been traumatized during their life, you want to work on the reticular formation, especially if it comes in, because it's turned on, right? And so what I typically do is a 3-minute treatment on theirs, and then I do the reticular formation. I will click on every one of those boxes, and I will run it for 3 minutes. This will turn off the reticular formation, and you will watch an autistic child just go, because they don't have to be on guard all the time. Extremely important. Okay, so if you use a holistic, if you click on it, it says it will take 17 minutes. Never, ever, ever click on the yes. Because believe me, you will have 17 minutes of dead time. And you won't even get a rectified number at the end. You will just be swearing at yourself for clicking on yes. Always click on no. You can pull that down to that amount of minutes and run it. So pull it down. We're not going to do it, but so you can pull it down to 17 minutes and run it. Okay? Put it up to 1 again.
Yeah, he's saying it's not to click on holistic.
Not to click on the yes, click on the no.
Yeah, but is it because you don't get direct?
Well, no, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Is it fixed? We need a Mandelay to find out if that's been fixed, because if it's fixed, it's good. You're going to go find out if it's fixed. Okay, we're going to run 1 minute. We're supposed to run 17, right? If you're going to run 1 minute. No, I'm doing mucous memories. We're just showing you what works here. Now, when I found this out first, I have friends in my life who are hands-on healers, and I appreciate them to the nth degree. And I was visiting one, and I decided I should probably make use of her abilities for whatever I was facing at the time. And what she found was that one side of my cerebellum had been injured, and well, both sides had been injured, but one was worse than the other. Okay, we're going to look at this again. Treatment over. Click. And then go back to holistic. It's now going to take 7 minutes, right? And again, you can just keep circling. When it says 0, or when it says a minus, if you want to do a really good work on a single organ, you run this until that happens. And this is what I did. She said my cerebellum back here had been damaged, and the one side was worse than the other. And it made complete sense to me because at one point my husband tried to strangle me. And so he had his hands around my throat and he was strangling me. And my 17-year-old son pulled him off. But he also has one injured hand. So the side that was injured wasn't hurt as bad as the side that wasn't. I ran this on the cerebellum for all that time, and it actually came to the end and it was done. We're done? Yeah, we want to know if the yes works now.
It does.
Oh, the yes works. Hallelujah.
And it's a killer panel.
Well, I know, that's what we're doing. Yeah, it's a wonderful panel, but if the yes works, then you don't have to swear at yourself for 17 minutes, right? Oh, that's wonderful, because I've done that far too often. Automatically, we do yes, right? Okay, so anyway, I ran this. It took me all day. The back of my skull was standing out about 2 inches up until that point, the inflammation. And at the end of the day, it was down normal. There's no inflammation. And it's been like that ever since. And I still reach up and touch it in amazement that I fixed that problem that well. So here is, basically, I listen to them, and then I also look at those organs that we came up with. And I had one more thing I was going to say about here. Can't remember it now, so we're going to just blank out on it. We're going to close it now and go into the organ sarcard results. And then on a green screen like this comes up, double click on it to get rid of it. Just double click. Okay, now down here we have the organ chart has been brought up at the stop, just at the bottom of the thing, Clay. Stop music there, just above it, we have a new button. And it's called organ chart. And if you open the organ chart, it looks like this. And so this is a program that on my QXC programs, you can work on it, but you really don't make a difference. So we're going to go up to therapy, and we're going to hit treat all above 100. And you can actually see this one, and usually within 3 clicks, you have everything between 60 and 100. This one works wonderfully. Well, this one is doing all of the organs at once. That's the neat thing about this one. It's bringing all of the organs into balance, right? So for example, here I have spleen, gallbladder, liver, something else, emotion. Yeah. So there's some pretty extreme things going on me in the moment. And if you look at the bottom, the only one I have under 60 is the pineal. Now, this is the chart that convinced us to buy the scale in the first place. Not that it worked well, that chart, but when I went for my first session, I also took my granddaughter. From the time she was 18 months old until she was 12, she had constant stomach problems. And she had gone to doctor after doctor. We had tried, let's cut out this food, that food, the other. Let's check for allergies. Let's do things. And nothing worked. Now you can do, just keep going under 100. We're still. So you can do over 100, you can do under 60, or you can do balance. And when we get them close to 100, then we're going to go and do the balance, okay? Anyway, the morning that I was booking my session with the scale, the grandchildren had turned up at our house, and Ebony was crying. Her stomach hurt. So Clay, instead of taking her to school, took her to the doctor, and the doctor looked her over and told her it was all in her head. Said things like, everybody has a sore stomach. And Clay looks at the doctor, and he looks at Ethan, and he says, Ethan, do you have a sore stomach? And Ethan says, no. And Clay says, I don't have a sore stomach. Not everybody has a sore stomach. And the doctor says, well, it's not cancer, you know. Helpful. He comes home, he's a little bit angry, shall we say? And I'm on the phone booking this appointment, and he said, book appointment for Ebony. We put her on this, large intestine, small intestine, everything else was perfect. She almost reached out and hugged the computer because this is the first thing that ever listened to her, that acknowledged her problem. It was Candida. Within 5 sessions, we not only had eliminated the pain for good, she also changed her diet, and she was really good about it, but we eliminated her pain for good, and she's, it's, we bought a scale. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, we're going to do a balance next, yeah? I guess so. You know, the truth of the matter is, I believe I see the results. I cannot explain how anything works in this program. I see the results. I cannot explain how I can put a fax paper into a fax machine in Canada and send it to Hungary. I can't explain that. And I don't try. I can't explain how my car works. But I get in it and I drive pretty fast down the highway, right? I don't know how this works, but I see the results. And that's what I go for. And I can become very comfortable in saying, I don't know. Yes? So that just gives you a glimpse of the physical stuff I do. If I find something like, for example, my liver, I had yellow jaundice when I was 4 years old. I only remember it because if you have yellow jaundice, your pee is brown. And my job as a 4-year-old was to pee in my special pot and tell my mother what color my pee was. And it was just this amazing thing to a 4-year-old child that everyone else had yellow pee and I had brown pee. So I've never forgotten that little detail, right? But also, you know, it did not shock me to see liver come up as my chronic problem. Are we okay? We are okay. So now if you have a weekly client, you're going to see this thing stays. It doesn't go to those extremes all the time. I think that if you fly to Budapest and don't bring the books, it's going to go look like that again, though. You know, you got to understand everything's in the moment, and we keep doing trauma to our body. So we're going to move on from physical now to mental factors, which is the big one. And what's physical man? Oh, the first place I go for mental factors is programs. Programs, and down to muscular. And then up to sports superconscious report. And there you have a lack of emotional focus. Okay, stop everybody. Programs, muscular. One word, I'm only going to give you one word, the first one. And sports superconscious report. And then you get this one, and up at the top, you get totally different ones than we had before. He went out and went back in, and that's interesting. I don't know if I have ever done that, because I've never seen them come up different. And you can repair all. But you can also talk to your clients about what this means when it comes up here, because these really show emotional blockage. So you have a client that comes in and it says, excess lying to self, or excess lying to others. And you put that out to them, guess what their first thing is going to be? Denial. And then they wake up. I never admit how sick I am. I'm lying to myself. I keep on going. I don't stop. Those kind of things. I had a 17-year-old. He was a friend of a friend. I mean, the son of a friend, and he was suicidal. Suicide. And he agreed to that we would put him on here. And he was so proud of himself, because this is back when I did the sock panel with everything in it. And all of his matrix numbers were above 400. And he was so proud, because he had the highest numbers. And then I went on this page. Now, this was back when he couldn't see the screen, because he didn't have the screen turned on. And it came up, excess bullshit. It's pretty hard not to start laughing in front of your clients when that comes up, because that was him. It described him to an nth degree. So I don't usually tell people that excess bullshit has come up unless I know them really well. So we've got that rectified to 100. Very simple and very straightforward. But this gets you talking started, right, with your client about mental factors. Sometimes you're going to get the, in the yellow and purple, you're going to get NLP as your yellow and purple choice. I always do my yellow and purples. We never, ever do them without. But you may get the NLP one, which is a mental NLP interference, right? Right now I have addiction. Okay, but right above the activation tray there, Clay, is mental NLP. No, over. Right. That one. Oh, you're almost on. That one. Okay? Yeah. Now that's the one they're asking for. If you are going to be working on yellows and purples, this is the one they're asking for. But this is not one that I will work on subspace. You want the person that you're working with to either be with you or on the telephone, because you only want to use their words. Right? Don't type what you think in here. Type what they say. If you run this through, it will keep on giving you hints and so on, and treatments and so on. It's an incredible program. And if you follow through on it, it's worth doing for mental people who are stuck in mental situations. So I'm not going to run it now because it's quite a long one, but you can fill it out and you can fill in all these words, and then more blanks come up to fill in and so on. It's quite an interesting program, but it's worth doing for anybody that's really stuck. Okay? Now, if it comes up for clients that either aren't in the room or I know are not capable of going through that, like my autistic clients who can't tell me what they're thinking, or someone else who I know is not ready, I will just go to NLP. Okay, NLP. Yeah. NLP and treatments. Yeah. Yeah. NLP treatments down to unconscious choice. Okay? And that will give you the therapy that the person wants today at an NLP level. Now, if you click on this, double click on it, what am I doing? I'm stimulating insight and self-awareness in all of you. Okay, if you double click on it, you will see that it comes up with a transfer to test screen below it, right? So when it's done working. And so if this is a real situation for this person, that they really need to work on this, you can actually click on this once and get it rectified to whatever it does. It's working still. I went to treatments at the top. Oh, therapy? It's therapies. Therapy, sorry. And down to the bottom is unconscious choice. Yeah. Okay, it's done now. It's only 60%. Then I'd keep going. On this program, I work between 100 and 104. There are some people who say 125 and it's great. No, it isn't. 104 is the maximum you want, 100 is the lowest. But we're not going to do that today. Oh, we are doing that today. What? Oh, it just says that what we're doing is working on balance, right? We're trying to balance the situation. So if you go up to 125, it's like your teeter-totter has gone way up in the air, right? And we want your teeter-totter to be sitting balanced. 100 is balance, right? 104, up to 104. If you look at things like the disease dictionary and stuff, that's where you're getting, that's the highest they're taking as the maximum value. So that's why I do 104. And I do see the difference in the clients when I respect anything between 100 and 104. Okay, we're going to go to test, transfer to test. Yeah, okay. Back and down, let's see if it's still there. NLP. Okay, no. Okay, just hit one. Okay. Yeah, double click on that one. Yeah. The thing about it is, what you're going to do is, if you do this, it's actually going to become in these trays, and you can actually work on all the physical causes of these mental factors automatically for your clients. And so if you have very severe emotional conflict or emotional blockage, this is a great way to start moving stuff using the actual skill results for yourself. Okay? So now, see, it's gone in there. It's already there for you in these. Where did you get that thing from? Just remove all this stuff and remove this thing. Okay, so here you have the problem that I had, right? And then we can do the mental echo. So that is, where is it coming from in the mental world? We can do the causal echo, we can do the etheric, we can do the cursive. So let's just do the mental and show what comes up. So it's going across the whole matrix to find out what is causing these mental echoes. And then you get the yellow bars on the side there, and by double-clicking on them, you will treat them. So, and it takes 7 seconds, right? Yeah. And you want to bring it up to 100, the rectify bar at the top there for all of these. And you will get more and more and more as you're going along. Then you can start the harmonics, the search harmonics. Can you hit the search harmonic? Search harmonic takes 3/4 of a minute, right? A minute. It's the longest one. But it brings up more buttons. Now, if you don't want to do this from NLP, you can actually put anything you want in these red and purple boxes. And so if a client comes in and says they have shingles, you can type shingles in there and you can do the same kind of thing. So whatever comes up, you can use this mental echo, and it does incredible stuff, and it brings up stuff. You know, the thing that I love most about the scale is when you press virtual doctor, or when you do this, I look at it and I think to myself, what doctor is going to come up with all of those solutions? I love that, absolutely love it. So as you can see now, right under the yellow lines, there are 2 new buttons, okay? And there will become 2 more as we keep typing, okay? So that's how you use those, and that's how you can use them with a mental conflict. Now I'm going to teach you something about the disease dictionary that nobody else has brought up. I can tell you I've learned a lot about the disease dictionary in these last 2 conferences that I never knew before, which is great. But we're going to do, but I'm going to show you a special little trick with the disease dictionary that I love. I learned this first. Back in Edmonton, we used to have a therapist group. We met every month, and all of us therapists got together and shared what we learned. It was incredible. And that's where an awful lot of my education came from. So the first thing you want to do when you get to disease dictionary in my world, and this is not to say anyone else is wrong, because you can do this so many different ways, right? But in my world, I go to the unconscious choice. And if something comes up and you haven't got a clue what that means, you go up to medical definition and symptom chart in this list, and it'll tell you. So if your client looks at you like, what? You can pretend that you actually know something. But when I bring this thalassemia major up and double-click on it, right? Now, you know that you're double-clicked on it. Okay, now if you go over to electro again. Electrobiofan. Yeah, and then okay. You'll see it up at the top. If you see abdominal pain at the top, you haven't clicked on it. Just understand that. Okay, so but before I go to the electroacupuncture, I actually go up to possible mental cause faction. And just see if there is a mental cause of this one. There isn't. Okay, close. But if you go to another one, tinnitus, go down to tinnitus. Okay, and then go up to the mental cause, right? Oh. Got to find one, and it depends on the person too. But a mental cause will come up for some of them. And that's telling you that the mental cause is the cause of the physical disease, not the physical disease.
If you don't remove the first one,
oh.
kiss the top and you bring it back to dealing with tinnitus.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to remove this one. It's going to bring it.
I don't know which ones actually. Does anyone know anyone that actually, it might be per client too, but anyway, I want to tell you the story about a client that I had this. I work long distance with autistics all over the world, and a mother phoned from Texas, and she said, would it be possible for me to have a session before you put my son on so I can feel what it's like? And I said, no problem, you know. And so she said, I'm really, really stressed, and I know I'm really stressed, and that's not enough time. And, but I'm going to let you do this. So I'm going to have a nap while you're working on me. So I'm going to drink water, I'm going to have a nap, and then you work on me. And I put her on, and she was coming up very healthy. Her bar scores were great. Nothing was coming up that was anything that I was worried about. And I went on here, and I went on possible mental cause, and it said, the child is unwanted. And I said, oh shit, how am I going to say this to her? And so I did the session, and she phoned, and she said, Gail, what the hell did you do to me? And I'm thinking about this weak, watery little session that I had just done, and I knew that the only thing that really made a difference was the child is unwanted. And I took a deep breath, and I said, well, something came up in the disease dictionary as an unconscious choice. And so then I went to the mental causes and worked on them, and it said, the child is unwanted. And she said, my God, I was adopted at birth. Adopted at birth. It wasn't her child, it was her. Totally, completely changed her life, that one session. And she now owns a scale. Okay, so pay attention to that. And if we follow through, when you go and see how many minutes, and it comes up with 45 minutes for this, and then you work on the mental fact, it'll go down to 2 minutes. You know it was a mental problem. If it's still at 45 minutes, you know it was a physical problem. Okay? We have 5 minutes. I got to look at my paper. Okay, we're going to go to NLP, AFE, the riddle. I need to go to the riddle. Okay, so NLP, brainwave, cancer. Okay, I want to show you how to work with the deep, deep, deep trauma. brain scan, yeah, run it once so we get the DJAC cancer scan. Okay, now people work with all different ways, and this is the way I've come up with working with this and talk about power. A lot of people put on a lot of these. I try to work on one at a time because of how important I think it is. Okay. What is it doing now? Yeah, I know, but we need to be on the cancer scan. Go down to the little, this thing at the bottom. Yeah, I need to see the cancer scan. Yeah, that one. Okay, so our cancer scan is working. Now, if you go to the results of the cancer scan, you're going to come up with something, we hope. Sometimes you don't, and that's a wonderful thing you can celebrate. Okay, I'm going to read this riddle. Separation conflict of an abrupt, brutal, or ugly nature, or due to separation from a loved or respected person. For example, your father had an accident with his motorcycle and his brain was squashed. What I do with this is I copy it, okay? And I read it to the client and tell me what this means, okay? Then I go up to treat, no, not treat, where is it? Add additional piggyback. And it's going to give you some more things. So we have betrayal. This scale is far too good. When I tell you the story, you'll understand. Need to change, spiritual, conflict, concern is nothing, but there's society and a lack of forgiveness. I mean, this is big stuff when I tell you the story, okay? So you read that too, so the person can see that this is also connected to it. It's connected to a betrayal. It's connected to a need to change spiritual, and so on. Then we're going to close it out. Now I will run this, perhaps, depending, but we don't have time right now. So we're going to close out, and close, and close, and okay. And now we're going to go on mental factors and emotion chart. And we are going to paste this riddle in the white line. And then we are going to go to unconscious reactivity, right above it. Right underneath the riddle, over here, this way, yeah. And you are going to put the age up there, 68. And you're going to start. Now, the reason I understand this conflict is it has come up for me before and obviously needs to be worked on again. And I had a lump growing on my forehead, and if you really look at my forehead, it's white now. The lump kept growing bigger and bigger. My mother had lumps. She had them removed. They were non-cancerous, so I wasn't worried about my lump. It was just there. And then it was getting so big, and I was combing my hair so perfectly, trying to cover it. I decided I needed to take it off. And of course, I live in Canada where Medicare is free, right? So you trot off to the doctor, and they do what they have to do. They cut it off and found cancer. And so I started running the cancer program here instead of doing what they wanted me to do, which was deep, deep, deep surgery and then skin grafts. And I said no. Something happened at childhood age 11. It's with God, and it's served in the nerves. Okay? And so anyway, this came up for me, this accident that shouldn't have happened, right? When I did the emotional. The lump on my forehead started the day I heard the rest of the story. When I was 11, my grandmother died, and my grandfather moved in with us and lived with us. And at a certain point, my mother felt incapable of looking after him, and his daughter felt incapable of looking after him. And so he was put in a senior's residence in the nearby city. And one day, we got a phone call. And they said he fell in the elevator and he broke his hip. Grandpa didn't survive that. 16 years old, I was at my grandfather's funeral. But you see, 11 is when he moved in with us, right? Respected person. The spots started growing in the early 90s, after I heard the rest of the story. My brother was a fireman in this city for years. And what the fire department had discovered was that the elevator in this building, the doors would open, but the elevator wouldn't come, and people were stepping into the shaft and falling. Look what came up on the scale. Betrayal, society, and the cancer started to develop. Obviously, I need to forgive them. It's kind of hard, though. Now, can you imagine being a health professional who goes to a family knowing that and saying very calmly and coolly, he fell in the elevator? No lie at all. Yes, he fell in the elevator. They didn't lie, but they also did not take responsibility. So anyway, that's how I work on it. I work on this now. What do we got? You can do, well, we're not going to work on that. Right. Oh yeah, do the disease path, disease type and disease path. You want to do skin cancer and, no, yes. You want to do degeneration of skin cancer on here. So this green thing comes on, and you could go now. I'm doing this because the spot, I think that it might be coming back just because I haven't done the forgiveness, right? So anyway, when we work on this, and he's going to show you how, show you a couple of things. Degenerative, now type skin cancer in the bottom. Yeah. You know he's slightly deaf, I think. Not right. Well, I just don't think we communicate well. Okay, and then go back over here and run disease path. Now you're going to get more information down here. This is what I want to show you, okay? And now you can work this, and this is where I worked 104. So my last thing I want to tell you is a client of mine that I had last week. Because the thing about this whole thing is we cannot hurt anyone. We can open doors that cause a lot of trauma. And we have to be very, very careful not to open doors. We have a woman that was coming to us who's in her 80s with what her family defined as memory issues. She wants her family to be happy. So she very willingly comes to our sessions. And we work on her memory. And when you ask her anything, I don't remember. I don't remember. I don't remember. She wasn't getting better. She was getting worse. She had psychosomatic, diarrhea, vomiting, all this kind of stuff. And we finally, in one session, found out she was sexually abused by her brothers as a child. She fled to Canada from Italy to escape that family and ended up marrying a very, very abusive man who abused her all those years, and she's still living in the house where he abused her. She doesn't want to remember. And every time we were putting her on the scale, we were making her remember. So be careful. Do not open doors. You do not close. Make sure you rectified. So anyway, last week, I had another woman there, and she came in. She has an indigo. She was testing to see if it was working, and she ran it. So we ran her thing. We did this, and it came up with with the riddle, and she said, it's all about abandonment. I was abandoned. And then she said to me, I see myself sitting on the front porch with my mother, and she is crying. I'm 3 years old, and I make a promise to myself that I will make sure she never cries again. So we go on here, and we're working on abandonment, and she's telling me about being put in the convent when she was 4 years old, and how dark it was, and how mean the nuns were, and how when the older students tried to help her, the nuns would beat them for trying to help her and so on. And she said, I was abandoned by my family. I was abandoned by my church. I was abandoned by everyone. And she's talking like this, and we're doing this. And we're running it now. I do treat emotional, treat profile, treat emotional, treat profile until I get 100 to 104. It wasn't coming. She has spent thousands and thousands of dollars going to healers all over the world to heal herself. And she has learned the most incredible ways to get rid of this. And so she's doing them. She's stomping around my office, getting the emotions out of her and doing all of these things that she has been taught. She is doing the rosary and promising to look after her children and the skill is coming up with rationalization, denial, bargaining, and we're not rectifying. And I reached the point that I have to get ready for my next client. And I say, we can't do this. It's not working. You're trying to take control. You're trying to do it yourself. I want you to relax, feel it, and let the skill do its work. And she looks at me and she goes, and she says, they didn't abandon me. I abandoned myself. And the tears started flowing, and the program rectified without even running. You have to get to the end. Be very careful. She had spent 76 of her years of her life living pointed the other direction because as a 3-year-old, she saw her mother crying. Thank you.